1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Jeez, it's cold out here. Could you print in this weather? I guess you could. In the late 1970s, major work. Chicago is a big city with big neighborhoods, but there are smaller parts of the Chi that have played a huge role in its success. What's good, YouTube? It's Louis Gusto. Welcome back to Chicago. Today we're in the former printing hub of the Midwest, a micro neighborhood located in the South Loop, Printers Row. It's a frigid but sunny early spring day, so let's take those good vibes, finesse that like button, and explore Printers Row. Printers Row is one of Chicago's smallest neighborhoods, encompassing only about 12 city blocks. And these aren't even normal Chicago-sized blocks, but we'll talk more about that later in the film. It lies within the official Loop community area and is roughly bounded by Ida B. Wells on the north, State Street on the east, Clark Street on the west, and Polk on the south. It's adjacent to the South Loop and easily accessible via CTA. Take the red line to Harrison, the blue line to LaSalle, or the brown, orange, pink, or purple line to Harold Washington Library. Bus routes that serve Printers Row include 22, 24, and 62. There are also plenty of divvy stations around the neighborhood, like this one at Dearborn Station. Printers Row is the perfect neighborhood for architecture lovers and history buffs. Although the printer part of the name no longer technically applies, it's fun to imagine ourselves back in time when millions of books, maps, and catalogs were printed in this tiny part of town. A phenomenal way to start your day in Printers Row is at Hero Coffee Bar. Earlier we showed you the hidden gem version in the alley off Jackson. This one is a little less hidden. It's in the Manhattan building in Printers Row. This morning I got myself an ice cold brew. Even though it is frigid out, I still like my iced coffee. I guess it's a Chicago thing. The Manhattan building is the oldest surviving skyscraper with a steel skeleton. I know that's a mouthful, but it's actually pretty dope. Look it up. Hero Coffee Bar serves up excellent coffee, tea, and pastries. At this location, they got some great artwork. You can study, get some work done while you have an amazing drink. The Donohue building, no relation to the Donohue show, was the first major printing factory built in the district, constructed in 1883. 30 years later, an annex was added, and up until 1971, it was the home of M.A. Donohue and Company, a publishing house famous for reprints of classic kids books like Little Red Riding Hood, Three Little Pigs, and Chicken Little.
Over the next 3 decades, more printing houses would be built.
In 1891, the Pontiac Building. In 1897, the Lakeside Press Building. And in 1912, the Second Franklin Building. So how did this area evolve into a printing house row? Well, first of all, the location was extremely convenient as this neighborhood lies just about a block south of the Central Business District. Second, in 1885, Dearborn Station opened up, which spurred growth in the area. Up until that time, it was just a small, unimpressive collection of buildings constructed just after the Great Fire of 1871. Having a train station nearby facilitated the distribution of product to the rest of the country. And finally, the extra long and narrow blocks allowed for tall, narrow buildings to be constructed, maximizing the natural light coming in. This was crucial for actions like typesetting, printing, and bookmaking. Remember, back in those days, electricity in office buildings wasn't nearly as common as it is today. Printers Row Park is an appropriately small 0.38-acre park located in the heart of the neighborhood. It's got an ornamental fountain and benches inspired by those typewriter things that put ink on the paper. They're actually called sorts. What once stood on the site of this park were buildings constructed just after the Great Fire of 1871 and a restaurant known as Frank's Cafeteria. I wonder what they served. During the warm months, Printers Row Park is home to a farmer's market. And in September, the annual Printers Row Lit Fest, one of the biggest literary festivals in the country. The The vast majority of the buildings in this neighborhood serve the printing industry. Everything from showrooms to printing machines to the offices where publishers conducted business. Printing dominated this area for around 25 years, after which some companies began consolidating and others like R.R. Donohue moved further east. Back to Dearborn Station, it is perhaps the most recognizable landmark in Printers Row and the final remaining 19th century downtown train station. Believe it or not, it was designed by the same architect who designed the original One Times Square in New York City. In 1971, the final train pulled into the station. The tracks were demolished and replaced with suburb and a city Dearborn Park. Meanwhile, the station was converted into a museum/office space.
Since 1982, Sandmeyer's Bookstore has been carrying on the literary tradition in Printers Row. And if you love specialty grocery items, be sure to check out Toto's Market.
Printers Row largely escaped the urban renewal projects that decimated nearby neighborhoods like Prairie Avenue and Greektown. However, the widening of Congress Parkway, today known as Ida B. Wells, did end up destroying about 12 classic buildings. Let's pour out some liquor for those we lost. The Caxton Building, designed by Halliburton and Roche, and the Monon Building, the final work of Chicago's very first architect, John Mills Van Osdale. In the late 1970s, major work was done to get this area listed on the National Register of Historic Places, where it is known as the South Loop Printing House District. I hope you're enjoying this Printers Row neighborhood guide. Let me talk to you a little bit about the sponsor of today's video. Me. Yeah, I'm actually the sponsor of the video. Did you know that last month, over 80% of you watching were not subscribed to the channel? We gotta get those numbers up so I don't have to sell this ad space to somebody else. So go ahead and click that red subscribe button and let's get back to the show. It would take almost another 20 years for this neighborhood to get Chicago landmark protection, but in the meantime, one by one, the printing houses became actual houses. Ironically enough, the very first printing factory in the neighborhood became the very first factory in the entire city to be converted into an apartment building. The final printer in the row, Palmer Printing Incorporated, vacated their offices at Clark and Polk in 2018. The 130-year legacy of this neighborhood will always be remembered. And today, that's largely what Printers Row is, a residential neighborhood. It's got shopping, dining, easy access to public transit, a small park, dedicated bike lanes, pretty much everything you could want in a Chicago neighborhood. Most notably, Printers Row represents fascinating urbanism, a surviving part of the city once dominated by a specific industry due to a perfect storm of conditions, peace, and blessings.